Welcome back to Bookkast, bestsellers in minutes. We take those must-read books and give you the best bits, analysis included, all without spoiling the ending.
Sounds good.
This time we're diving into your selections. From Rebecca Yarros' Iron Flame,
Okay.
chapters 1, 3, 51, and 64.
All right, I'm ready.
Now these chapters, they are a roller coaster.
Buckle up.
Forbidden romance, monstrous threats, and artifacts that could change everything.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
To help us navigate these fiery themes, we have our resident fantasy expert.
Hello.
So let's unpack what makes Iron Flame so captivating.
Well, it's really fascinating how Yara sets up all these seemingly separate elements. You've got the romance, the war, this whole mystery of the Wardstone, and then she just masterfully weaves them all together.
Yeah.
From the first chapter, you get this tension, this underlying feeling that everything is connected.
Okay, let's start with Violet and Exaden. Their relationship is anything but straightforward.
Absolutely.
It's not just the forbidden aspect. There's this deeper distrust that simmers beneath the surface.
Right, it's more than just like, well, will they, won't they thing.
Right.
Violet's hesitation goes beyond Jaden's being all secretive, right? It's rooted in his family's history, the legacy of the wing leaders, and how that all directly ties into what the kingdom's going through right now. She's really wrestling with whether she can actually trust him, and, by extension, whether she can trust the whole system she's part of.
And that internal struggle, do you think that's mirrored in her journey as a dragon rider?
I think so.
Because in these chapters, we see her grappling with her powers.
Yeah.
She's pushing her limits, but she's also facing setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
So do you see a parallel there? Like the difficulty of mastering her dragon Andarna, is that kind of like her difficulty trusting Xaden?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a brilliant parallel, right? Both Andarna and Xaden require this level of surrender. For Andarna, it's her power. For Xaden, it's his intentions. And for someone like Violet, who values control, self-reliance, that surrender is a huge obstacle. It makes you question, can she really succeed as a rider, as a leader, if she can't let go?
It's like she's trying to control everything, even the things that she can't fully grasp. And then there's this whole other layer of urgency, because we have this looming threat of the Venom.
The monsters.
These monstrous creatures, and they seem connected to this mysterious Wardstone.
Right.
So how does that kind of add to the story?
I think the Venom are more than just mindless monsters, They represent this primal force, like this darkness that's threatening to consume the whole kingdom. And the fact that they're connected to the Wardstone, this ancient artifact that's supposed to be protecting them, that makes the situation even more precarious. It's like the very thing meant to safeguard them is now the source of their potential downfall.
And that's where the intrigue really kicks in, right?
Well, for sure.
Because the Wardstone is this powerful symbol.
Right.
But no one seems to understand it. You see all these characters vying for control, manipulating events, just to get their hands on it.
It's like a game of chess. With the Wardstone as the king, you got Dane, Kat, even Eric. They're all making their moves, some more subtly than others. But the question is, are they playing for the good of the kingdom? Or are they just in it for themselves?
And amidst all this political maneuvering, you have Violet dealing with the emotional weight of loss.
Right.
The deaths of fellow riders, like Liam, they weigh heavily on her.
That's a heavy burden.
So, in your opinion, how do those losses shape her development?
I think those losses are really crucial to understanding how Violet grows, She's not just training to be a rider, she's being forged in the fire of this war. Each loss pushes her, forces her to confront what it really means to fight for her kingdom. It's brutal, but it also shows how incredibly resilient she is.
It's like she's carrying the weight of their sacrifices on her shoulders, and it's driving her to be better, stronger. And then we have that pivotal moment in chapter 64. Violet decides to imbue the Wardstone with her power, even though she knows it could cost her.
Right.
This feels like a huge turning point in the story.
It's a decision made out of desperation, but also out of duty. Violet is willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good, even if it means risking her life. And what's so compelling is that she's making this choice without fully understanding the consequences.
That's what makes it so powerful, right?
Yeah.
It's not calculated. It's an act of faith.
Wow.
But it makes you wonder, is she strong enough to bear the burden of that power? And what will it cost her in the long run?
Those are the questions that stay with you after you finish the chapter. And what's really brilliant is the answer might not be what we expect. Yarros doesn't shy away from showing the cost of heroism, the toll it takes on Violet, both physically and emotionally.
So we have Violet, struggling with trust, mastering her powers, and ultimately making this life-altering decision. But let's not forget the elephant, or rather the dragon in the room, Andarna.
Ah, yes. Andarna. Andarna is more than just a powerful dragon. You know, she's like this key to understanding how Violet grows and the deeper magic in this world. The fact that she's a siphon, a dragon capable of absorbing power from other sources, that adds a whole other layer to their relationship.
That detail really stood out to me. It's not just a cool power. It feels symbolic.
Yeah.
Like it's a metaphor for all the challenges that Violet is facing. She's being pulled in all these different directions, trying to balance her own needs with everything that being a rider demands, and then the expectations of everyone around her. So Andarna's ability, it could be a strength, but it could also be a vulnerability, just like Violet's internal struggles.
Exactly. And it just raises so many questions, like how much control does Violet even have over Andarna's siphoning power? Can she use it strategically? Or could it overwhelm her? Could it even consume her? That potential for good and bad. That's what makes it so fascinating.
It's almost like Andarna represents this raw, untamed power that Violet is trying to harness within herself and in the world around her. And speaking of raw power, we can't ignore the political stuff happening in these chapters. It's not just a fight against monsters. There's a whole power struggle going on within the kingdom itself.
Oh, yeah. The political landscape is just as treacherous as those battles. Against the Venin, we see characters like Dain, who seems to be operating in this moral gray area.
Yeah.
Cat, who's openly against Violet. Their motivations are complex, and their actions have consequences, you know. It makes you question who's really on the right side, or if there even is one.
It's a world where you can't trust anyone. Alliances are shifting. But even within the riders, there's this tension. We see it in Chapter 51, where Violet opens up to her squad mates about imbuing the Ward Stone. And the reaction is mixed. Some are supportive. Others, like Varish, they're skeptical.
That scene is so important because it shows that Violet isn't just facing those external threats, but there's also conflict within her own group. It really highlights what being a leader means, the isolation and the difficult choices. It also makes you think about how important it is to have those people you can really rely on, those who will stand by you, even when they disagree with you.
It's like she's trying to walk this tightrope, maintain control, while navigating all these different interests. And then there's her relationship with her mother.
Oh, yeah. That's tough.
Strained, to say the least. That confrontation in Chapter 64, it's so tense. Violet's defiance, her refusal to just follow orders, it's powerful.
It's a huge moment for them. It's like she's stepping out of her mother's shadow, becoming her own leader, her own woman. She's not just the obedient daughter anymore. She's a force to be reckoned with. But it does come at a price. The distance between them grows even more, and you're left wondering if they can ever come back from that.
It really shows how complicated family can be, especially when duty and tradition clash with what you want as a person, and this idea of choices having consequences. That's woven throughout the chapters. Violet's actions, even the smallest decisions, they all have these ripple effects that she can't always predict.
And that's what makes her journey so interesting, right? She's not just reacting, she's shaping things, even if she doesn't always realize it. And every choice makes her path more dangerous, but maybe more meaningful too.
And it's not just about her. Her choices affect the whole kingdom. So let's talk about the Venin and the Dark Wielder.
Okay.
They're not just the bad guys, are they?
No, they're more than that. They represent something deeper, a corruption that's affecting everything.
The Venin are a scary visual of that corruption, right?
Oh, absolutely. They never stop. And this Dark Wielder, he's so mysterious, adds a whole thriller element to the story.
It's like there's this hidden enemy controlling everything that makes things so much more intense for Violet and her allies.
It's not just a physical battle they're fighting. It's like they're fighting for the soul of the kingdom. And the fact that the Dark Wielder is obsessed with Violet makes it personal, even more urgent and dangerous.
It's like he sees Violet as the key to something bigger.
Maybe even a threat to his plans. And turning Jack, one of the riders, into a Venin, that shows you just how powerful he is. Makes you wonder who else he could influence.
That was a huge turning point in the story. It makes you paranoid, not knowing who to trust.
Right.
Which makes it even more intense. And it brings us to this theme of betrayal, which we see everywhere in these chapters.
Betrayal always comes when you least expect it. We see it with Dain, Cat's manipulations, even those riders who question Violet. It reminds you that even in a world with dragons and magic, it's the human stuff that really matters.
Right, so it's a reminder that even with these extraordinary circumstances, it's those choices we make, the relationships, the trust. That's what defines who we are. And speaking of trust, or the lack of it, we have to go back to Violet and Xaden.
Oh, yes, their relationship is the heart of it all. It's a real roller coaster of emotions.
Their connection is undeniable.
Right.
But it's fragile, too. The secrets, the betrayals. You just want them to find their way back. But you know it's going to be hard.
It's constantly being tested, pushed to the limit, and it's even more complicated because they're fighting for the same thing, but in different ways.
They're so different. But they're drawn to each other.
Yeah.
And their choices, whether they trust each other, it could change everything, not just for them, but for the entire kingdom.
That brings us back to chapter 64, Violet's sacrifice. It affects everything.
It defines her character, her commitment to those she loves, even if it means putting herself in danger. But it also makes you think about power, what it means to be a leader. What are we willing to sacrifice for what we believe in?
It's a pivotal moment, sets the stage for what's going to be an epic ending. And it leaves you wondering, what will the cost of victory be? Not just for Violet, but for everyone involved. You know, it's incredible how Yarros builds this world. It feels familiar, but totally unique at the same time.
We're not just looking at a typical fantasy setting. We're really getting into the culture, the history, how this society works.
That depth is what pulls you in. It's not just dragons and magic. It's about the people, what they want, the rules they live by.
Yeah, even how the dragon riders are part of the military, the importance of family lines. All those details make it feel more real.
It grounds the fantasy, right?
Even the language is unique. The terms they use, the sign language between rider and dragon, makes you feel like you're part of the story.
You're not just reading it, you're living it.
And the characters are so complex.
They're not just cookie-cutter heroes and villains. They're real people with flaws and desires and backstories.
Take Violet. She's not your typical chosen one.
No, she's different. She's headstrong, maybe a little reckless sometimes, but she's loyal, driven by this need to do what's right.
She's always pushing boundaries, her own and the ones other people try to put on her. And it's not just Violet. Even Xaden, who you might think is just this brooding hero, he has so much more to him.
His past, his family, all the weight he carries, it all explains why he does what he does. Makes him more than just a love interest.
That's what makes their relationship so interesting.
It's more than just sparks flying. It's about two people trying to figure themselves out against this backdrop of war and politics.
It's a relationship built on shared hardship, knowing what it means to lose, to sacrifice, to keep fighting. That's what binds them together.
Like two sides of the same coin, drawn to each other despite everything.
And through them, we see this theme of choice and consequence.
Every decision, every action, it has an impact far beyond that one person.
Violet choosing to imbue the Wardstone, sacrificing herself. That's a perfect example.
It comes from a place of love, duty, desperation, but the consequences, they affect everyone.
It reminds us that, even in a world with magic, it's the human choices that really matter.
That shape how everything unfolds.
And those choices, the courage, the sacrifice, that's what stays with you after you close the book.
Iron Flame isn't just fantasy. It's about being human. Our struggles, our choices, what we have to live with. It's about finding hope when things are dark. Love and loyalty guiding us through tough times.
And the strength to fight, even when it seems impossible.
Yarros created a world that's both beautiful and scary. With characters that we connect with, their choices feel real, like they matter. It's a story that makes you think long after you're done reading.
I think you summed it up perfectly.
Thank you.
And thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into Iron Flame on Bookkast, bestsellers in minutes. We hope you got some interesting insights into Rebecca Yarros' incredible world. Now, go and enjoy the rest of the story.